Hey folks, in this lesson I'd like to go over the image swap animation example from Chapter 8, Chapter 9 of your 3rd edition. It's just mousing over thumbnails. And so you can already detect there's probably going to be a hover event, and then it replaces the images, but there's more going on here. We've got to make sure these images are preloaded first so that they load quickly into the larger main image. So let's take a look at the JavaScript here. And I'm going to also take a quick look at the HTML. That's an important part of this. So we'll just nest these tabs together. And when we look at this, we see consistently with all the other book examples that we have a unordered list that's ID'd at image list. And then we have 6 images inside. So that said, what we're looking for specifically is the driver of this function, and I want to show it to you because it's a little bit different than the other code that we've been looking at. I'd also like to address something about this Shiv. This Shiv is an older link. This is what we should be using, and I'll make an announcement on this for the class. But basically it reads, if less than IE9, throw this script inside here, and that tells you again what a Shiv does. It modernizes our code for browsers older than IE9. It's another reason, by the way, why we want to, if we want consistency, we won't use content delivery networks with our code. That's an example of when that can go wrong, because this little link is a dead link now. So anyway, if you ever get that, you can find it in the console. It's proof that we should be using the console constantly for all development. But when you see something like this, you want to see the driver. And that driver is the HoverListener. So first of all, we have an each loop, which you know from jQuery, around every descendant of an image list that is an A tag. So this is why the HTML is important. We see all these A tags inside the list item tags. And for each one of these, we're going to make a variable that equals a new image object. And that source will equal whatever that attribute is for Ahref. And you'll see back here that in this case we have thumbnails, and the Ahref goes to a larger thumbnail. So this would make all the sense in the world, and if we go to this section and we click those thumbnails, we see it goes to the image. Goes to the image itself. So there's our code on that section, and we see a caption, James Allison here, which is the H2 underneath each one, and then the main image here. So that said, back to the image swapper. Now we have the hover here, and you might recall that the EVT has a large amount of information about the event itself. So if I were to console.log the EVT like this, or even down here below, we would see those values. So back to our application here, when I click the More Tools console, I can see on hover, we'll refresh this real quick, make sure it's preloaded, and now you see events. So I'm going to clear that and just do 1, and that's my event, and mouse out, it's another event. And I did that because I want you to see that the second event here is the one that on mouse out. So this is on hover, and this is when your mouse leaves the hover. Now, one of the tricky things about this one is how would it be done in mobile? Now here you see mouse enter, mouse leave, which is pre-built in jQuery. So how would this be done in mobile? Because mobile devices do not have a hover state. And I would use probably a long press if we wanted to see it, but this is one of those applications that are not going to be very friendly with mobile. And here you see my events constantly moving in and out. Anyway, this is our first big animation, and it starts immediately with hover, and we set the stop function and append animate to it, and it basically moves the thumbnail 15 pixels from the top and does it in a fast variety, which is pre-built in the animate property. If you want to see the exact specs on this, you can go to the jQuery docs. But one important thing about this is that for this to work, we would need, in our CSS, a top property in most cases. So this is our CSS right here. And when we look at all of these values, we see that there isn't one. And this is one of the benefits of jQuery, because it will control for you those elements. So that's a point where if you were using JavaScript, you would need to designate position relative top property on those images, but in this case we do not. So by doing this, we get this function right here, which is the slight drop, the 15. And then on hover, if you look at the bottom here, it animates back to the top of 0 and does it fast. So this is one of those things with experimentation. You can get a real good grasp on what's going on. But we've got the stopping the value and then animate. Now, why do we have the stop? Well, if we do this really rapidly, you see it is very smooth over the speed of that, and that's what that stop function does. It's sort of an equalizer of all the animations to make sure that they all run normally. Now, here we have an image URL that equals the href that you're no stranger to, and it refers to this, or this event object, and whatever the attribute href is. And then we make simply the image the attribute source URL. So this is only occurring on hover. Now that means that this image is going to be equal to this one, or 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 this one. So in relatively few lines of code, we've been effective at moving the main image down. So this right here cancels the default action of the link. And that's important because look at our links. It goes right here. So that's only on hover. But you'll notice that the default action of the link is moving this off the page, which is certainly a no-no. So that's where we're going to be running a nice homework example this week so that this does not happen. So that's one of the things that we'll be doing. But to close out our experiment with the hover, everything occurs in the hover state on this, and we're just controlling the thumbnail, but also look at this. This is one of the last lines here, and we're going to image list first child focused. So what is the first child? Well, here's our image list. This is the first child, and that is the first child of the first child. So that's why the ahref this is an entire child, because it encloses the thumbnail. So we're focusing it on just this. Okay. Now I want to show you what would happen if we took this first child right here, and we simply focused it on the image list first child. So we'll hit refresh. Okay, and go back here. Oops, I didn't mean to click that. Apologize. And there is, go back. And there's the first child here. So it would still work by going to the list item, because that first child encompasses the first child. And that's important to know when you're traversing through children. So this is the image swap application, and it will be part of your homework.